It is Heroes for Sale number 60, and just two of us, Stu, because the commander has been demoted to corporal and she's off somewhere down country.
She's down in Wellington. I think we give her I become commander and she's now cabin boy. Let's give her the and the good thing about that is I think once I explain the role of cabin boy to Sue, she'll probably be okay with it. So we can move forward with that.
Yes.
So, yeah. I've been, as you can tell, I've been thinking about it.
Yeah, just for just a little bit, bit.
I want to be number one. Call me pathetic. I'm all right with that.
That's all good, mate. That's
Captain
all good.
Pathetic or Commander Pathetic.
Patrolman. We'll leave that there, shall we? We'll leave that there and we'll crack on because we got the great crossovers. Starting with this one, and this is Marvel and 20th Century Studios doing a combo: Alien versus Avengers. Stu.
You know, when Disney announced that they bought Fox and that they then had Aliens and were going to start publishing those and Predator, I mean, this is what we wanted. Right. I mean, it's cool. You can go do your Alien stories to back up movies. You can do your Predator stories, and they're filming the Predator versus the Maoris in New Zealand at the moment. So can't wait for that to come out. But
are they?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, didn't know about that.
Yeah, similar to what they did with Prey with the
awesome
North, who was she? Cherokee Plains girl. It's going to be again in the forests of New Zealand against some Maoris. I mean, and that's all I know. Predator versus Maoris, and I don't know what it is. What's coming off with it.
Do we know where in the timeline? Because Predator versus Jake the Muss in 1980s Mount Wellington. That's what I want to see.
Look, I just don't give as much as I love the Predators. I don't give them much of a chance at all in the bush against a bunch of pre-colonial Maoris. I don't care what timeline you put it in. Yeah, I think I expect to see Predators get slapped down pretty well, pretty nicely. Who knows what'll happen to them in the end? But yeah, they're not going to win. Anyway, Aliens versus Avengers. This is the first comic we're going to do. The art is by, is it Ribic? Is that how you say the guy's name? It is Ribic, just straight Ribic. Which is, if anyone who's looked at his stuff, is beautiful. His tones, even those opening couple of scenes with the Kree that they've got, just, I mean, this is sci-fi. And it just looks sci-fi, doesn't it? The art style, having him in it is just the perfect choice. And then we've got it breaks into the story, and it's Aliens versus Avengers. It's not Avengers versus Aliens. So the aliens are kicking ass. If I had one critique of it, because it's probably going to be a 6-part story. It could have gone 12 for all I care. They do the rollover of Earth pretty quick, don't they? I mean, it's covered in a few pages that, and as anyone who's watched Aliens, once they get a foothold on a planet, once they've got a couple of queens, and at the speed they seem to be able to grow, which is quite phenomenal part of their, they are manufactured. And so Earth is kind of lost down to one city. And I think there was an opportunity to do a lot more Aliens versus various characters of the Marvel superhero pantheon, because clearly a lot of them have gone. And I think, I would have happily read a couple of comics worth of, Aliens versus Daredevil, because he can't see, working on those kind of themes, maybe their acid does burn the Hulk, whatever. But what they did, I like. I mean, obviously, they went somewhere different. And if you're going to do sci-fi, we all want different. We all want something else. Yeah, I thought it was beautifully drawn. Fantastic script with it. Enjoyed it. I just would have liked a little bit more alien superhero head-to-head action.
Yeah,
what do you think?
Well, yeah, similar to you, I really enjoyed this. I thought this was really well done comic. Like you said about the art as well, it's almost done sort of a bit watercolorish at times with some of the tones. There's a lot of washed out stuff as well, which is kind of cool. It looks really cool. A lot of darkness, and it's set. I was going to say, I know it's a comic book, but it's set in the future, because Bruce Banner's in it, and Bruce Banner is an older man. He's probably in his 60s in this, 70s maybe, something like that. But he still has the Hulk ability. So it is set down the line. And I'm really excited to see where they take this. And, I mean, I don't want to give too much away, Stu. I know it's only number one. But what happens to Miles Morales in it is pretty exciting, just quietly. I got to that last panel. I was like, ooh, here we go.
Yeah. just coming back to what you talked about it being in the future, one thing that's really interesting is there was no setup for this. Like, it's a crossover of properties, but Marvel haven't done a, how did the Avengers get into the alien universe and that sort of carry on. And in it, because we're on Earth, Weyland-Yutani's there. So does that basically mean, set in the future, the entire Marvel universe now incorporates Weyland-Yutani?
Or maybe, or I'll throw something else at you. Given that Weyland-Yutani is there, is it really Weyland-Yutani, or is this the Bishop version of Weyland-Yutani?
Weyland-Yutani. It's too early for Bishop, isn't it?
Is it? No, you might be right.
Yeah.
Actually, you might be right.
Yeah. I don't even know if they'd have synthetics.
Well,
maybe that'll come up. Well, they should do by that stage. If we go.
Well, I think, Stu, they find a synthetic, don't they? That is not of their making.
Yes.
So maybe that's where that comes from.
It's the one they thought was the Share. Yeah, and I like how they've done, like, if we're doing aliens and space, we're bringing in all the Marvel parts. So the fact that you've got Kree and Share in it, then Weyland-Yutani can be housed in Marvel.
Yeah, I don't have any issue with that. And I mean, Jonathan Hickman's a great writer. He's done some fantastic work. So, I mean, it's superhero versus alien, but it's not over the top superhero. This is pretty gritty.
Yeah, and there's definitely more story driven than the jump scares and stuff that you'll get at the movies with the aliens. Because I guess you can't do that in the comics. We're not going to get it. Have you ever had a jump scare in a comic? I never have.
No.
Flinched a few movies. I was not expecting that.
Yeah.
Just going to the bathroom back in 10.
Indeed. But I mean, yeah, no, I think it's a really cool story. It stands on its own, to be honest. I mean, I know we're saying it's Aliens versus Avengers, but it doesn't feel like you have to know anything about the Avengers or anything about the aliens to understand this comic. It could stand on its own really easily.
Yeah. I mean, but saying that, no one who hasn't heard of either of those two properties is going to pick this up, is my feeling. If you're an Aliens fan and you're an Avengers fan, which is kind of probably 90% of people who like Aliens like Avengers and vice versa, this is kind of a no-brainer story.
Yeah, man, and it's really cool. It's really cool. It's really done well. It's got an element of The Last of Us sort of about it as well, because it is basically an apocalypse on humans, and it's got the sci-fi thing. So yeah, it's a bit bleak, but I like the bleak, and I like the way the art reflects the bleak, and yeah, excited to see where they take it.
And I guess the other thing is, this is true to the lore. If you look at every Aliens movie, what have they done? They've completely dominated every place they've ever been put onto. They just spread, there's not a single Aliens movie where, even when Ripley's blasting the last one out the airlock, it's killed the rest of the crew. And same with this recent one, there's only ever one survivor if you get that with Aliens. And if it happens to be on a planet or a rock or whatever as well, that goes as well. What's your only hope? Take off and nuke the whole site from orbit. Fortunately, Earth's got enough nukes, so that could be a tactical plan in this comic. I don't know.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, who knows what happens in issue 6? So, yay, we won. Oops, what's left of where we're going to live? Yeah.
Hey, just on that, so if Disney have acquired Fox, and Fox have got Aliens, does that mean Ripley is a Disney princess? Can we put her next to Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, all the rest?
See, I'm torn by that, because clearly she would be, but the idea of Ripley being a princess is where I struggle with that as an idea. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, well, the aliens have already got a queen, so
Chuck it up, yeah.
Chuck it up. All right.
And she was a queen once too, wasn't she?
Exactly.
In 4, which is, if you got to rank them, it's my least favorite Alien movie.
Now, speaking of crossovers, this does go quite well into our next book, which is Predator versus Black Panther. And this is more now Predator versus Black Panther, which makes me wonder, with the Predators on Earth in Wakanda, whether or not this sets up a crossover somewhere in between the two timelines at some point.
Of what? Into the Alien one?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is basically saying they're all in the same world, right? So we don't even have to go to a crossover. So we
Well,
can.
yeah, but I'm just saying the timeline in Predator versus Black Panther is now. The timeline in Alien versus Avengers is the future. Black Panther is in both. So is there, but it's a different Black Panther in the future, obviously, to the Black Panther that's in this. Is there going to be a crossover timeline so that fills that space in between? I'm thinking about Alien versus Predator, which I know is not one of your favorite things to talk about, but there's a tie-in.
Well, they've also in comics, wasn't there Aliens versus Predator versus Judge Dredd?
Yes.
So they have done the two properties with another, and like we've got a. If you go onto the Heroes for Sale website now and search Predator, we bought a collection off a guy we're managing. We still haven't got them all up, and he basically had every single Dark Horse Predator comic that ever came out. So there's like a couple of hundred, and all these little stories, all these 3 and 4 part stories of Predator in a prison, Predator in the polar caps, Predator, Batman, Tarzan. They've never been wrong. Like, and even though you kind of with 5 pages to go, you know exactly how it's going to end. They're just fun, man. There's enough what if in amongst it to make you just keep coming back. And so the next one we are now talking about Predator versus Black Panther, which is the other crossover that's just started. They did Predator versus Wolverine earlier in the year, last year, and I struggled with that. I didn't think there was a very good story rolling through that one. Sort of Wolverine through the ages interacting with various different predators, and it just didn't have enough story in it. Whereas this one, I think is far superior, and the artwork is just look at these predators, man.
Yeah,
the
artwork is superb. I just had to do a double take because the version I've got is a variant, and I just saw Scotty Young on the cover, and it's like I just had to check that he didn't write this, but no, he didn't. He just did the variant cover.
And he's saying, "I've got to get to the chopper." Yeah, Scotty Young version of that doing it. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. This has been a pretty popular comic. We sold out of the main cover, so we had to use the variants for the pod. I'm on the Scotty Young as well, which I do like.
Yeah, it's cool. It's pretty good. It's very Scotty Young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this story, I think what I really liked is the Predator lore is very sparse throughout all of the comics and the movies that we've ever had, especially the movies. We know that there's this alien species that hunts for sport that clearly has a homeworld somewhere, and that it's a big honor system going on in it. So to see the kind of what you call it, not a civil war, but a little bit of the the understanding of how the different tribes do their stuff, I like that. And I always grizzle about canon because I hate it, right? What I hate canon where stories are forced to fit into a timeline of events, and characters have to be, you can't kill a character because he was alive in a different comic in 3 years. I'm like, no, you kind of can. But as long as Batman's always from Gotham, that kind of stuff, as long as you keep that sacrosanct, we're all cool with it. So I would like this to be a bit of Predator canon, what we've got introduced in the Black Panther comic. Whether it's going to stick, I don't know. But I thought that part at the start was pretty neat, with fighting for honor amongst the family for the various weapons and things like that. I enjoyed that part. And then we go Black Panther.
Yeah,
came on.
His sister annoys the crap out of me, to be honest. But I think that's her entire purpose. If you're selling this comic to to blokes who've got younger sisters, they will entirely empathize with the Black Panther. But I think they tie that in really well. The only thing I would say, the artwork is superb, and the way that they mesh they get the Predator to Wakanda is very, very cool. But it is a bit info dumpy, and it is a bit fast. I think they could have taken a bit.
Are you talking about that page?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that it's kind of like I realize why they've done it, and I will get issue 2 because I want to see where they take the story, because I think it sets the story up well, but it feels very set up.
Right. I mean, I get what you're saying about the busyness of that. There's a 2-page spread that basically takes the Predators from a planet they're fighting on to Wakanda. It's a very clever use of layouts for comic paneling. And it also very cleverly, because I think the part that you're talking about, it just feels so busy, is it brings in their future tech. So you've got the images, and then you've got the overlay that they would have because of their heads-up displays and things like that. So yeah, I totally agree that it made it busy, but I read that page twice just to make sure I got it, because I just loved it. I thought that was a really cool way to do that part of the story, as opposed to your traditional, 9x9, which this is 3.
Yeah, well, it's
3x1.
it's definitely not that. And yeah, you're right. I mean, you take your time with this and enjoy it, and go back, and it's the sort of thing that if you go back and read this 3 or 4 times, every time you go back and read it, if you take your time with it, you will find something else in the artwork, because there is so much artwork to explore.
Yeah, and there was, I mean, I know what you're saying. I totally agree, but they made 6 pages into 2 using the comic format and keeping it really, really sweet. I love that. It was one of my favorite bits in the whole story. And that part of, Wakanda with its shields and stuff, because it happens quite a bit. We continuously throughout the comic get views that we wouldn't be able to see if we were standing there as a human being with just our eyes. There are things on these pages that we would not be able to see, but they're making sure that we can see them as if through the eyes of the protagonists. And I think that was really clever, a really cool way of doing all that. I liked it.
And there were a couple of nods in there as well, like, without giving too much away. There's one point that somebody falls into a muddied river, and you're like, haha, they won't be able to find him now because I remember the movie, and so there's a couple of nods there. But I think in terms of the way the characters and particularly the powers are done, I think that this offers a lot. I'm really looking forward to seeing where they take Predator versus Black Panther, because, like, you're right, there's the Predator, who is the second son very much in his father's eyes, trying to prove himself. He's got something on the line. And then you've got the king of Wakanda trying to protect his people and protect his land and his technology. So yeah, I think it's going to come together really well.
But equally, it has set up, this is the Predators on a hunt. That's, they've done a kind of they've tried to make out that they're equal, but by the time you get to the end, without giving it away, you're just another squad in the South American jungle, man. You're the B team, the humans. That's what I get from that. Yeah.
I ain't got time to bleed.
Yeah, get to the chopper. Yeah. But I enjoyed that. Predator versus Black Panther. Definitely add this to your list, folks.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I know
Percy is the writer, Chris Allen's the artist.
I know amongst diehard Alien fans, Predator versus Alien Alien versus Predator wasn't the done thing, but I loved that movie when it came out. I was like, I don't care about any of the lore from anything else. I just thought they did a great job with that movie, and I enjoyed it. And if you're a fan of either franchise, you're going to love these comics.
Yeah, I think my take on that movie was, there was such an awesome Alien versus Predator comic that came out, and I think we were all just gagging for that. Like, can you do this? And it was set on another planet. But that entire movie was green screened anyway. So how hard is it to set something on another planet and green screen it all? Who cares? And so once you got over that disappointment that it's going to be on Earth, then I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
it's fun.
I thought it was good. And the nice little spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the movie by now, that's on you. But the Predator escaping onto the ship at the end, but there's that little he's infected with the alien, and then that kind of gives birth to the whole, this is how they spread through the universe.
Yeah, they're cool. I'm glad that we're starting to now get these comics. I felt it's been a long time coming that Disney's had all of these properties. And I like that they're just telling these stories without giving us some convoluted shambles as, to how to tell the actual story. And we talked about this last week with DC versus vampires.
Yeah.
You came up with a very good way to give us a neat story about DC characters fighting DC characters without having to do some dimension rift and a wizard, and don't worry, at the end of it we're going to put you all back. So I really enjoy that aspect of these stories.
Well, it's another evolution in the medium, isn't it, Stu? Because I think there have been studios who maybe have kind of forced writers into this situation where they've got, we've got to get all this into 32 pages, how are we going to make it happen? And now this current crop of some of these crossovers feels a lot more natural than what they would have felt maybe 20 years ago when they were trying to clunkily push them together.
Yeah, yeah, there was a big part. I mean, growing up seeing Aliens and Predator, we were always, oh, when are they going to do a crossover? And there was just this intellectual property contracts that said never. You are never going to see this. And yeah, it's nice that they've sorted this shit out. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, our next comic, you didn't have to worry about intellectual property rights getting in the way. There is very little intellectual property in this comic.
And I say but boy, there's some laughs.
Oh, there are some laughs. And I say that as a massive fan. I collect Barbaric, and I love Barbaric because it is Conan the Barbarian with a hell of a sense of humor and a sentient axe who likes to drink blood. So Barbaric versus Deathstalker. Stu, I'm the fantasy head, but I'm keen to get your take on this comic.
It's funny. That's the thing, right? That's the whole. But that's what Barbaric is. If it's not funny, it's failing. It's failing miserably. So you have some comics that keep coming out, and there's a point sometimes when you're looking at it going, I don't know where this story's going. So, and I don't know if and you killed off that character, blah blah. And so there's for many people, there's jump off points because it's not doing what it originally did for you. But if you've got a comic whose job is ostensibly to make you laugh, and it keeps making you laugh, then it's 100% successful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're not coming to this for character development and that. You're coming for the lols, and it's got them. It's got them in spades. Yeah. I love it.
It pokes fun at the fantasy and sword and sorcery genre, but it takes the tropes on. And I think it does it really well. And as I mentioned, Axe, sentient Axe that talks, is the wise guy, is the funny one, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a evil warlock in this one whose name is Harpies, and the Axe thinks he said herpes, and then that's 2 panels of herpes, harpies, and them just like basically riffing on each other, which is great.
How do we get that across in the comic without, because you can't read a joke because you've got to know the characters. The art's cool. And it does the Conan-esque woman well with their, in their Greek toga or outfits, whatever you call them. So there's a little, a few bare breasts floating around, but that's not going to be bothered because anyone who's getting this is old enough to get the jokes. It's never going to be offensive. It's a one-shot, Barbaric versus Deathstalker. We had some Barbaric comics that were really like $2, I think, for a while. We probably still got some of those if you want to check out Barbaric. But I don't want to spoil it. It's a one-shot story that's a bit of a crossover. Barbaric Deathstalker. Tim Seeley's writing, who does a lot of this. He does hack slash as well. So horror comedy is what his strength is. Get it?
Yeah, mate. Well, like I said, I collect Barbaric. I love Barbaric. It's no secret that I love Conan the Barbarian and all things fantasy and sword and sorcery, etc. And Barbaric scratches an itch for you that is that comedy thing, which fantasy isn't always good at laughing at itself, but this does it really, really well. So lots of humor, lots of blood and guts, lots of one-liners. It's just a lot of fun.
If you were a Critical Role fan, would this be?
I think yes. I think to some extent. I mean, Critical Role does a lot of different things, and some of the characters, because there's so many actors involved in it and people involved in it who drive the story. But Sam, I can't remember his surname now, who plays the horny gnome in it in one of the series, this would be very much on brand for his sense of humor. So yeah, if you are a Critical Role fan and you like some of that stuff, then you would love Barbaric versus Deathstalker.
Yeah, and I think Rat Queens, people who like that will like this Deathstalker as well. I mean, and their sword and sorcery role play-ish-esque is their origin, that focus on the humor. And the people who come into the shop who role play do it because they have a good laugh when they do it, right?
Yeah.
That's what most of it's about. So yeah, Cursed Barbarian versus Warrior King, Axe versus Sword, Owen versus Deathstalker. When an evil wizard summons the 2 most reluctant heroes of all time, they must square off, but a clash of steel alone may not decide the final victor. All right.
Indeed. That sums it up pretty well. And yeah, I highly recommend it. I loved it. I showed it to Rachel, and I showed her that gag that I was talking about the harpies, herpes, and she was like, "Oh, so it's quite juvenile." I was like, "Yes, if you don't like it, I know it's funny. Brilliant."
Yes.
Maybe that says more about me than her.
Did she say juvenile's bad? Or good? I think that's I've been called that, so I hope it's good.
All right, Stu, let's do it.
Oh my god, we're really going to talk about this.
Yes. Do a power bomb. What do you mean you haven't read this?
Mean you haven't read this? Oh man, Do a Powerbomb by Daniel Warren Johnson, which hopefully everyone listening to this who pays attention to what we talk about and recommend has read Murder Falcon. So this is the same thing as from the point of view of this is a contained single graphic novel that tells a great story with Daniel Warren Johnson's crazy art, and it is the origin of this came from when he had his first child and trying to get the baby to sleep at night, and he would struggle. So he'd go downstairs and sort of bounce the baby and then end up putting on the TV and watching Japanese pro wrestling.
As you do.
He was not into wrestling. He wasn't even into Japanese culture, but for some reason he just started watching Japanese pro wrestling at 3 a.m. And from that, he's brought us a comic, Do a Powerbomb, which is based on Japanese pro wrestling meets Mortal Kombat meets, I don't know, Sandman. You know, get into the gods in that fantasy era. So it starts off as just being not just, but a wrestling comic focused on Earth, or sort of in our realm, and until he gets, what would you call that, the golden fiddle offer kind of deal. You know, if you do this for me, I can bring that back for you. So, and then it's just Daniel Warren Johnson's fun throughout. And the page that I turned for me that I just went, oh man, how cool is this guy? He's got montages in it. Guys, we need a montage. You know, even Rocky had a montage, but there's a panel that goes, right, a montage, and so they just wrap up a bit of training session for it. I just thought, that's so cool. That's so cool. What do you think, Riccardo?
Oh, mate, he's had a lot of fun. He's had a lot of fun making this comic, and you can tell, right?
Yeah,
because it's a lot of fun to read. I mean, I was a wrestling fan in the 80s, right? Not Japanese particularly, but the old WWF, Ultimate Warrior, and all those guys, and and you can feel it in there, and it's a great story. So it's got all the wrestling tropes. It's got the names and the tag teams and the moves and everything is really, really cool, really well done. But it's a deeper story than that as well, Stu, because it deals with a lot of other things that it's probably deeper than you would expect a graphic novel called Do a Powerbomb to sort of have as you peel through the layers.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, Daniel Warren Johnson did that so well with Murder Falcon, right? You know, there's a story about someone basically dying, and this other story that he brings in with the Murder Falcon, you know, summoning this ancient entity through his axe or his guitar. And it's the same thing here. We've got this kind of silly little story that, like you said, we all understand. I mean, there's a lot of people who still watch pro wrestling, but equally we've all watched it to decide whether we wanted to watch more of it at some stage. So we know what's going on in it, and yes, they do. So it's not alien, you know. Like for a lot of people, there's some sports that you'd start to watch, you'd be like, what's going on? I don't think anyone sees pro wrestling and is like, I don't know what's going on. So having all the tropes in there, like you said, the tag teams and the names of the teams and the way they do the competition and the way they have the trash talk and all that sort of stuff, that's done really well for the story. But yeah, there is something way bigger going on in the background, and the way they resolve that, like the final, you know, and you don't want to talk about it. We can't say it.
No,
man.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy when you get towards the end, man. It's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
So, you know, but you have a lot of fun getting there. And then by the time you're there, you're like, you're into it and you get it. And you're like, okay, I want to really see how this resolves, because I think a lot of people can relate, you know, that have been through stuff to what's in the comic as well, which into the novel as well. But the thing that I got most out of this was just how much fun I think Daniel Warren Johnson had making this thing, because you like it. I mean, he says it's the wrestler meets Dragon Ball Z. I'd even throw Bloodsport in there. Do you remember that movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme?
I'm sure I saw it, but I don't remember a thing about it. And I don't think I'm going to bother watching it again. So,
Oh well, it just there's that bit where he fights the big bad guy at the end, and it's very much a tournament winner takes all type thing, like this is, and they get to the last guy, and they've got their hands wrapped, and then they dip the bandages in wax, and then they go and roll those bandages that had been dipped in hot wax and broken glass, and so that's what they're punching each other with, and it's kind of got a bit of that feel about it too, doesn't it?
Yeah. And like the deeper underlying story with this let's talk about, where's Daniel at in his life? He's sitting there with a newborn baby, and anyone with kids, you can't not hold a kid and think about life and big picture and death and how it's a part of it and all that, and it's just that wonderment, right? And I think the way this comic resolves is quite beautiful, even though it's not what we were hoping for. But you get the message in it is, live.
Yeah.
And it's done beautifully. So I think the way he did Murder Falcon and the way he's done this. I mean, there's some people say, "Oh, I prefer that one over this one." I'm like, dude, this is like choosing your favorite child. I rank them. Sue doesn't. I think it's a genetic. I think mothers don't rank their children, but I think dads know which one's the best. Which one's my retirement fund? It's that one.
Well, I think it's fair to say. I remember Lars Ulrich, the drummer from Metallica, being asked that question about Metallica albums.
Yeah.
They said, which one's your favorite? And he said, that's like asking me which one of my kids is the favorite. And then he points to the Black Album, which obviously had Enter Sandman, and everything. He said, but that one's going to keep the pool heated.
Yeah.
It's worth mentioning too. We often talk about a writer when we say, oh, it's by this person, right? And generally that writer has got a supporting cast of artists and things like this. And he does have a letterer and a colorer in this, but Daniel Warren Johnson has written this, he's created it, he's illustrated it as well. He's done all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, he's done a few books like that. He did one for DC on Wonder Woman as well. So occasionally he does both. And I guess it all depends on how personal or whatever it is to him, or the project, or whether he just sees it as easier. Maybe he's really fast. That could be it. Some guys are just fast at drawing, so he's able to do it. And then, if you've got some of these layouts, it's just incredible. And if you've already got that vision in your head, maybe it's easiest. Maybe 50% of it's already done by the time you've written it all down. I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes it's easier just to get it down yourself rather than trying to explain it to someone else and then fix what they haven't interpreted correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could be right. You could be onto something there, actually, sure.
But if you got Murder Falcon, get to a Powerbomb. And the cool part of them, they're one and done. There's never going to be a volume 2. So, you are getting he's put in everything he wanted to tell in this story is in there. So there's nothing else coming, and it's what's there is beautiful.
Yeah, man, if you love wrestling, you can't go wrong.
And even if you don't love wrestling, it's still, wrestling. That's the thing. You know it, so you'll understand the comic. You know Aliens, Avengers, Predator, Black Panther. So the stories,
Do you have a favorite wrestler, Stu?
His favorite wrestler. So when it first hit TV, I watched the first episode when it first came out with my mates, and we were like, "What the is going on? How come there's a crowd?" I think that was one of the questions. Like, why are people paying to go and see this? What was it? And it was Macho Man Randy Savage, and so none of us really liked any of the wrestlers, but one of them had an assistant. I think her name was Elizabeth. So we all
that's Macho Man Randy Savage. Yeah.
So let's watch more of this, and then the next time he was on, she wasn't there, and I think that was we're not bothering watching any more of this crap.
Brilliant. There we go. There's a bit of insight into Stu's wrestling history for you, and what it really comes down to. Probably more importantly. Good stuff, Stu. All right, do a power bomb. Beautiful. And you've got an event this weekend too, don't you?
Oh, Saturday we've got the Duffy book by Ant Sang and Jeff Schusterman. They just got in today, so we've got an event for him coming in to do a signing, and we've got Oscar Fong for his massive World of
massively
Online.
multiplayer
Yeah.
online game of ghosts, online
Something
world
like-
of ghosts.
we did last week, which
Yeah.
is equally cool. So two really just high quality works. You know, they're just wow. That's part of what blows me away with those two.
Yeah,
The quality of New Zealand production.
and they're in
New Zealand's
Saturday.
producing. Yeah, Saturday from 10:30.
Saturday from 10:30, 205 Simon Street in the city.
Yep. Cool. Yeah,
Done.
we got that 205 right this week, Ricardo.
I fucking remembered.